What is your take on AI? There's so much of buzz around the whole world, right?
See, where world is today, everybody is talking about AI. From investor to enterprise to consumer to government, anyone from a startup standpoint. GCC will create a significant value with AI.
Right.
And this also can capitalize on, right, moving away from global competency center or a service center to global innovation center for the enterprise. So how has been your journey in integrating these two components with Omind itself?
Once you acquire a customer, you need to support the customer. AI then brings in that ability. So that's where the customer experience improvement can be done by using AI. And that's how we evolve our products. So I do not see that AI is going to replace humans, but I see it is going to complement, make it much more efficient and better. Hello everyone, welcome to Omind Pulse. I am Jyotendra, your host for today's episode. Omind Pulse, we bring in thought leaders from the industry. We talk about innovation, we talk about AI, we talk about startups and everything that is in between. For our very first episode, I would like to welcome Jitesh Bajaj, who is CEO, founder, investor, author and researcher. A very warm welcome to you, Jitesh.
Thank you, JT. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Very warm welcome.
Thank you.
So, Jitesh, let's begin talking about your book, right? What inspired you to really write and author that book?
So see, 20 years in corporate.
Right.
And the role was more around drive innovation in the organization you're working for.
Right.
Using new technology such as AI. Now it gave me an access to startup world globally.
Right.
From Silicon Valley to India.
Right.
And also an observation to read that majority of innovation is being driven through West countries and largely China. Raising a question, why not India?
Right.
Which led to a research, and this research led to a book.
Right.
So book emphasizes on what are the fundamental changes we need to do in India to become a global innovation hub in the coming time.
Oh, that's brilliant. So what would you say are the three things that one should read in your book?
The reforms we need to do in education sector.
Wonderful. That's a brilliant topic.
The way we need to make it easy a little bit on the investment.
Right.
Which startup seeks.
Right.
Today is really struggling.
Right.
So if you are in a tier 1 city,
correct,
you still have an access point. You have individuals you can reach out.
Right.
But if you are in a tier 2, 3, that's where access to funding is quite challenging even today.
Yeah.
That needs to get better.
I've noticed, like bees to honey, you have attracted investments in your company. You've also attracted some good media attention. What are your tips for the startup community and entrepreneurs who aspire to attract investments and who also aspire to create a name for their organization? What is your advice to them?
See, to me, if you are an early stage startup or want to move into entrepreneurship,
right,
I think it's important that are you clear what you want to do?
Right.
And with that clarity, can you drive inspiration?
Right.
Now, normally what we see, inspiration is centered to customers or the users of your product or service.
Right.
But same inspiration needs to be established with any investor you are not going to meet.
Right.
Normally people get under pressure when they are meeting an investor because money is going to come from them.
Right.
But try to create inspiration of your idea and spread it.
Okay. Okay.
Right? By default, you will get traction. You will see people reaching you out for advices.
Right.
Right. So, and also, I'll give you my example.
Right.
When I was entering into the market, somewhere back of my mind, I was clear that I don't want to be a fresher. Right.
Right.
Who have just started a startup. I want to leverage what I have learned in corporate for 20 years.
Right.
And make more influential entry.
Yeah.
Where you have a good understanding on domain, you know what you're building,
right,
and you know what product and what it will do.
Right.
Right. So you can deal with tough conversation with customers and investors.
Right.
So I'll say be inspired with whatever you're trying to do and try to tell a story with it.
Yeah.
All this will happen.
Okay. Wonderful. So, so Jitesh, this transition between, corporate world to entrepreneurship, it's a journey in itself, right?
Yes.
Would you like to share that journey? What was that aha moment that actually made you transition from the corporate into the entrepreneurship journey?
Interesting. It's very interesting. See, the example and the instances I was sharing about the startups which are coming from West
Right.
to drive innovation, etc., which led to this book, right? So when I was writing this book, I met a lot of people,
Right.
right? From governments to private sector
Right.
to even media houses. I could see that everybody is quite motivated in India. I could see a data where there is 1 million startups are projected
Right.
to come,
Right.
right? Third, the governmental push to become a massive economy, a 30 trillion economy in the next 20 years.
Right.
And I was thinking, see, where this growth will come from. Okay, we have big corporates.
Yeah.
Of course, there will be some contribution from them, but the larger innovation will come from the startup world.
Right.
And I wanted to be part of that growth story. That led my decision,
Yeah.
right, backed up by the research I did for my book,
Right.
and launched 2 startups
Right.
instantly.
Yeah.
So Edvans, which is another startup I have, it focuses on bringing modern technology to education, specifically AI,
Right.
because that will be a major game changer across the world.
Yeah.
So do I have the right knowledge at grassroots level for the students right now?
Yeah.
So when they graduate 10 years later, they
Yeah.
have good knowledge around it
Right.
with the right advanced technology.
Yeah.
And similarly, Tetris for startup,
Yeah.
where they also provide contribution to economy. So
Yeah.
look at this, right? Look at this
Yeah.
pyramid.
Yeah.
Startup from an economy standpoint sitting at top,
Right.
education changing at grassroots level,
Absolutely.
but eventually merging together in the time to come. So that's why I wanted to contribute in these 2 areas
Right.
and take journey forward with that.
For our audience, especially those budding entrepreneurs and those who have just embarked upon this journey of entrepreneurship and startup, what is the formula of refining your thought process?
Exposure.
Okay.
I think sometimes we have an idea in our head.
Right.
Sometimes it's really good.
Yeah.
But I'll say do a massive research about it.
Right.
Sometimes the idea becomes our baby.
Right.
We become bit hesitant, right, to share
Right.
with somebody else.
Right.
But believe me, nobody is bothered,
Yeah.
right, to just take your idea and run away with it. Time has changed.
Yeah.
I'll say have a good network, have
Right.
some people you can talk
Right.
to shape your idea, and also do a massive research that what's happening globally. Believe me, there are cases where people have not done a basic internet search to find the competition.
Okay.
There are many cases, and this becomes the first feedback sometimes
Yeah.
from Tetris to founders.
Okay.
That, do you even know about this company?
Right.
And the answer is no, I've never heard.
Okay.
What it required, just a random Google search. So I think it's very important. Do the research. Don't worry if you need to share your idea with somebody else.
Right.
There are founders who reach out, let's sign the NDA first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, in that case, how the founder doesn't know that I don't know that idea already.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it's just be a bit open, be flexible, take that risk, and whichever field you are getting into, be expert of that field. Because if you don't know, then it will be difficult. Because investors nowadays receive so many pitches, so many proposals, and they are much more informed than us in most of the cases.
Right. Right. That's a massive learning, I think, and thank you very much for sharing these tips. So Jitesh, in your opinion, is the idea more important or people more important?
I think both are very important,
Right.
and both requires to be there at the same time to get things moving. But I believe every founder of a startup must figure out in the initial phase that what are the keys of success they need to monitor to get to a success route. For example, do I have the good idea? Do I have the right people to support it?
Right.
Do I have a right understanding of the technology I want to use? And do I have the right understanding of the business I want to set up? If, for example, these points are in place, largely you will see success. And think through. Most of the founders I have seen that their initial motive is, let me just get to a seed fund. that they're not thinking beyond.
Right.
Right. So it's important to think through, then take a reverse route, and be very confident on the overall journey. Sometimes it's like, build the car and then run the car at the same time. But if you can have that entire thought process concrete and then take a reverse, it's just not you will feel more confident, but anybody who is associated with you, whether it's your team or investor or any other stakeholder, will be able to see your vision thoroughly and
Right.
support you. That would be my point of view.
I mean, thank you very much. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. This journey for any founder, co-founder, when you go through your first raise, right? There are many lessons, many meetings, many things that comes in play. So, because you have gone through this journey as well from all sides, right? All aspects. So, can you elaborate this a little bit so that you can help some of our aspirant entrepreneurs and those who are going for their raise? You give them some tips about what to do, what not to do, potential areas where they could potentially go wrong.
See, I think a couple of points I covered that understand the industry you're getting into. Understand your competition.
Right.
Right. You need to know who else is out there and they are doing what. Have they seen success?
Right.
If they have seen success, what has worked out for them? Third, try to be clear in explaining and how differentiating, proposition you are trying to build.
Right.
You need to be clear. It's very important. Otherwise, people will take in their own senses and on their judgment that, okay, this startup is trying to do X versus you might be trying to do Y. Right? I'll just say that be just a bit clear. It's very, very important.
Right.
Otherwise, it becomes an incubation discussion versus listening to the pitch.
Okay.
Yeah. Another point of recommendation from my end that be clear in what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And 3 factors you can always apply.
Yeah.
Desirability, do people want it? Viability, can you put that level of money?
Yeah.
Feasibility,
Yeah.
technical feasible. If these 3 checks are in place, largely, you will be able to convey the idea.
Yeah. I mean, very interesting, and thank you very much for sharing. And you have some brilliant data points there, right? You spoke about 1 million plus startups coming up in the next 10 years. I think India today has a little over 140,000 startups across
Right.
India. So where do you see the role of the government in this?
I think in the last few years, specifically 10 years,
Right.
there is an ongoing narrative by government of India to promote,
Yeah.
to fund, to start having some policies which enable more startup development
Right.
across years. Right? So the writing has been done. Now the question is how we ensure the right implementation. How do we ensure that any fund which government is granting
Right.
is getting spent on the right innovation?
Right.
And are they performing well?
Absolutely.
Right? I think that journey still needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it will be great if government can also have that end-to-end tracking
Yeah.
somewhere specifically for the initiatives which are coming from their end. And we try to calculate,
Yeah.
right, what are the economic contribution has been made by the investment and policy which has been changed recently.
Yeah.
So that would be my take, specifically from a government as a stakeholder standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm learning so much from this conversation. I mean, what you've said so far, it's kind of also aligned with my thought of, let's say, there is a purpose of being a country of innovation, absolutely, and there is a consideration for people. What people do we need, for this purpose?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're talking about governance and performance, right?
Yeah.
I think I personally, from my value and from my thought process, I tend to tilt towards this, right? And it's been exciting. So, I mean, what is your take on AI? There's so much of buzz around the whole world, right? So, where do you see India, AI, and what are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I'll tell you the change which I have seen in myself, specifically after GPT launch. I think it has enabled few things which looked very difficult before to do.
Right.
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 So I'll give an example. If you look at a corporate, majority of automation has been done for entry-level roles so far.
Right.
right?
Right.
Where there's a data entry, automated. You want to fetch some information from document,
Yeah.
automated.
Yeah.
There's a various use case,
Right.
various success stories.
Yeah.
But now if you look at the way thinking has evolved by just having this GPT or AI interface, which is available today,
Right.
people are trying to automate the decisions we take every day,
Right.
right?
Right.
And what it has inspired me to do, to ask big questions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Ask big question to yourself.
Yeah.
Do not get restricted that I may not have that technology today to do it, but let me dream, let me go further, and technology will follow.
Yeah.
And that's what AI is enabling nowadays
Right.
to the masses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the two key parameters,
Right.
the way discussions are happening in market, there's an argument that enterprise AI will take a lot of time to get delivered,
Yeah.
which is true.
Yeah.
But versus if you look at the consumer side,
Yeah.
there's a massive adoption.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you remember,
Yeah.
after GPT launch, there were 100 million users in just few weeks.
Yeah. That's true.
But can enterprise do that?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
There's a data security,
Yeah.
there's a privacy, there's
Yeah.
a choice of technology.
Yeah.
Plus the way technology is changing every day,
Yeah.
it becomes difficult for an enterprise to figure out where do I invest?
Yeah.
Where do I
Absolutely.
invest? Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to say that today, if I look at the last 2-3 years,
Yeah.
there's a right foundation getting set up where people are discussing about possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they are experimenting with possibilities.
So can I just interrupt you here because you bring a very interesting topic about enterprise adoption. So is it because the technology does not exist, or is it because there is a resistance and we overcomplicate in the corporate world, in enterprise sector? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it depends what type of organization you are. The more legacy organization you are, it's a challenging journey. Reason being, you are already spread, your business processes are set up, you already have a technological infrastructure, and then you would like to trust a technology first before you bring that in from a full scale standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Versus startup has an opportunity while you are getting your birth, right? Start embedding AI right there. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not sometimes resistance. It can depend person to person,
Yeah.
role by role, and also if you think from CTO lens, it's so many checks you have to do. You have to ensure if customer is interacting with you as an organization, your data is secured.
Right.
Right? There is less biasness into it.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever technology we are putting, we have right skills to support it. So various fundamental changes are required, which I think organizations are doing right now, majority of them, but still to have a scalability view on AI, that how I want to transform my business model, for example.
Correct.
Right? What are the mainstream technologies I will invest in future? That is still, I believe, in largely with the organization is in discussion,
Yeah.
which they can speed up.
Absolutely. And you know, I mean, I may be starting something very controversial here. Do you think, like, for example, you know, we were talking about 1 million plus startups that are going to come up here in India, right? Then we were talking about, let's say, the frameworks within which they would operate, the governance that the government and the policy, of course, right? That there has to be a policy. And predominantly, if you look at the 140,000 odd startups that are based out of India at the moment, majority of them are in AI and CX, right? Because that seems to be a great use case. Now, where my thought is leaning is that this ecosystem is actually employing about 1.5 million, employees at the moment.
Correct.
So it's not a industry that you can ignore, right? And
Correct.
it is attracting major investors in seed, pre-series, Series A, Series B, right?
Yeah.
Now, having said that, do you think that the openness from the enterprise CTO and their teams should be much more open? Because unless most of these startups which are operating especially on the business to business technology, if the enterprise are not open towards that, then, you know, it's going to be very difficult for them to really get customers and really, you know, adopt the technology, you know, R&D and refine the product, right?
Yeah.
So do you think, the controversial point to be noted, that the government should mandate for India enterprise customers to work with startups?
I'm not sure about mandate, but I think there has to be a narrative set,
Right.
right?
Right.
There has to be some example set. There
Right.
has to be some success stories set.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give an example.
Right.
Like I was mentioning in my previous point, that sometimes it's not easy for an enterprise to figure out, specifically when a technology is emerging. It has not proven, it's emerging.
Yeah.
When OpenAI got launched, the pricing model was not clear. So how do you set up a technology, solution on something where you're not clear on ROI? As an example.
Absolutely.
However, while we realize this transformative technology can really improve a certain business outcome,
Right.
enterprise can choose to work with startup as their experimental ground. So before you bring in a technology
Right.
to enterprise, you work with a startup on some given problem statement,
Right.
let them prove it, get insured about data security, pricing models, how it's going to work, what level of talent management we have to do, then you bring in. So what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
incubation
Yeah.
can be with such startups.
Absolutely.
Scale sometimes in some cases can also be with startups.
Right.
But you have a more effective solution in place or an arrangement in place as an enterprise
Yeah.
which you can leverage on. Last 10 years, what has happened? India has been matured really, really well. We have done few things, we've tried, we failed, but now there is a good knowledge around the technology. There is a good
Right.
knowledge around business. I think that must be tapped on in a more strategic way.
Okay, that's a brilliant point. Perhaps I was leaning towards, every organization which is mature has a R&D budget, right? Typically, whether with a startup or internally, you also have to continuously innovate, right? So what I was thinking towards, like, well, you are making policies, you put a governance in place. Somewhere to make this successful, is there a government hand in terms of bridging the gap between mature enterprise customers and startup ecosystem? That's the view that I was
Yeah.
kind of leaning towards. I mean, from a thinking now, I don't know the answer, but it's just something that has been toying around in my mind, that should there be something around this area?
There can be. And I'll tell you, it starts from home.
Right,
Is government engaging today
right.
with startup
Yeah.
for their own transformation?
That's a brilliant point.
Right.
Yeah.
Look at the scale government interacts with the citizens. You have pensions,
Yeah.
you have retirements,
Yeah.
you have many other things
Right.
which you interact with, citizens every day.
Right.
Their queries.
Yeah.
Are we taking support of an established corporate to do that transformation? Or do we also have a proof point that we
Yeah.
have worked with a certain startup
Yeah.
as government and made that a success?
Right.
I'm saying it can start from there,
Yeah.
right? And corporate is anyways, see, many corporates are having incubation with startups.
Yeah.
Majority of corporates, you see, the acquisitions they do is of a startup,
Right.
right? So if you have that plan, that this is my short-term goal, this
Yeah.
is my long-term goal.
Right.
In long-term goal, at least, there can some incubation begin,
Right.
where you know what fundamental changes you would like to do,
Yeah.
and take that as an experiment bed and start.
Okay. So Jitesh, I want to come back to your startup for startups, Tetris, right? It's a brilliant concept. So when you are dealing with so many startups, right, where are you seeing the AI story unfolding?
In startups,
Yeah.
okay. See, if you are a product organization, if you have a product idea,
Right.
majority of founders which we meet today, they do come with a view that where they want to use AI.
Right.
Now, how it is evolving? Now, everybody as a founder who is registered to Tetris, they try to use AI to even refine their business model. They try to capture the customer feedback,
Right.
the trends,
Yeah.
the utility of the product they are building
Yeah.
through AI, build the right insight into it, and then again revamp their business model. So that infusion is coming along now. That is just how it spreads everywhere with the startup community.
Right.
Now, for the founders who do not think about it from the day one, we do say, can you think about the AI applications right now, which you may need 2 years later of the setup?
Right.
What are the key insights you might need from your business to grow it? And can you infuse certain functionalities in your products today itself,
Right.
so that you do not need to set up a massive R&D unit in future to understand about the performance of your product and the scale of it?
Right.
So that's starting to happen. But I think with the technology involvement on AI, I think it will get better. So JT, you mentioned about customer experience
Right.
in our conversation. We also spoke about AI for startups.
Right.
You're also running a very innovative startup called Omind. So how has been your journey in integrating these two components with Omind itself?
Jitesh, that's a wonderful question. You know, customer experience is quite interesting, right? Because it's something that every organization needs across industries. In two ways, the way I see it. The first part is that you need to acquire a customer, right? And then once you acquire a customer, you need to support the customer. So very early on, when we were building Omind, the thinking was that we want to be a top AI company, but within the boundaries of customer experience. So we were very clear, right, that we wanted to play in this field. Now, having said that, we also saw business problems here. Now, what are the business problems? Typically, every organization has certain business outcomes that that wakes you up, right, that you want to deliver. So one is revenue, the other one is cost, and you want to increasingly create value in the organization, right? Which means that somewhere customer interactions become very important, because one thing leads to the other. Like, for example, metrics like customer satisfaction, NPS, right? And then to be able to deliver these metrics, you also have sub-metrics which help you achieve that, right? And we saw gaps here because humanly, it is impossible to monitor all the transactions, right? So we decided, okay, we will bring in a product. We have a quality monitoring system, because AI then brings in that ability. So that's where the customer experience improvement can be done by using AI. And that's how we evolved our products. So Omind today broadly has 3 products and sub-products, right? One is employee lifecycle management, which is where we believe that if you have happy employees and they're taken care of, then they will provide a good service to customers, right? So that's why we call it within the customer experience suite of products. Second is the customer experience. Now, in customer experience, you must have read and heard about Gen AI chatbots to marketing automation. So all of these products fall within the customer experience suite of products that we have. And the third is a very innovative product called Arya. Now, Arya actually is a very good combination of AI and the concept of improving customer experience, right? We saw that, okay, there are customer service agents. Now, customer experience is vast, right? But within that, we chose to first look at the customer contact center side, which is interactions with customers. Now, there we saw that agents who are servicing customers, whether for a bank or a travel company or a retail company, we thought we want to make their life easier. Okay, we thought of, okay, how can we assist them? How can we bring a co-pilot them? How can we improve them? How can we change their behavior, right? And how do we make it engaging for them? So that was at the heart of the concept of this product. Second, we thought that while doing so, how do we impact the business metrics, which is how do we make it much more operationally efficient for our customers? How can we reduce cost? And how can we improve revenue if we are using the product on the customer acquisition side, right? How can we improve conversions? So that gave the birth of our innovative product called Arya, which is then, an engine that was born. Then to be able to do so, what was happening was we saw that the market was really about looking at monitoring these interactions after the event was happened, right? Now, we thought, okay, if it is afterwards and an afterthought, then typically it's going to be very difficult to bring in those significant improvements that we want to see. So we wanted to bring it real time, right? How do we monitor real time transactions? An email is happening, or a call is happening, or a chat is happening during that interaction with the customer. And then that should then help us prevent. So we wanted to get from a reaction to a prevention. So that is how our product was born. And within this ecosystem, we now have about 75 customers globally. And Omind is seeing a huge growth in this sector.
Very interesting, JT. Now, JT, you are in this industry for more than 20 years. specifically in this contact center and customer experience space.
Right.
What has changed in the last 10, 15 years versus when you see it now, comparing to Omind and where it started, the entire back office and BP operations in India? What has fundamentally changed?
That's a very good question. And I think we'll have to go back a little bit into how things used to be, right? Let's say, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, right? Initially, it was, if you look at the evolution of the industry within especially customer experience and AI, because AI is also Excel spreadsheet, right? In a very rudimentary form, right? But today it's much more advanced. So I think there is an evolution of technology that has happened. Second, there is an evolution in also the thought process, right? It started all with cost arbitrage, and of course, India at that point in time being, coming into the technology age as well, so that you can provide the infrastructure that is required for being able to outsource from the Western world to India. Because if you look at history, at first, the Western countries came to India because there was a huge cost arbitrage, about 40-45% of cost arbitrage between operating in the Western world and India. That would not have been possible without having that infrastructure to be able to pick up a customer service call or do a sales call to US or UK from India, right? And that is how it started, okay? Then over a period of time, this industry itself has shifted, right? It was not just about the call anymore, but now today, if you look, you see HR being outsourced, you see legal processes, you can see finance and accounting, procurement, even very high-end knowledge processes are outsourced, right? So the industry has evolved. Then if you look at in parallel, the technology has evolved. So the divide between technology and business process that used to exist is becoming thinner and thinner by the day. And we believe this is the way forward where, it will continuously evolve in this industry, in this segment.
So if let me take my own example. If I need to reach out to any organization from where I have bought a product
Right.
or a service as a
Right.
customer, I have 3 channels today: email, phone, and now there are chats
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
right? And there are millions of customers of many organizations and millions of interactions every day. So how your platform, which you mentioned is AI powered, is helping to deal with across these channels, but also giving insights to anybody who is managing their business operations to improve their operations further. How that happens with Arya?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, impossible to think, right? I mean, the which is why the technology evolution was also important, right? I mean, it had to have that processing power. That's important. Now today, it's absolutely possible because Arya does precisely that. Humanly, if you let's take an example, Jitesh here. If somebody calls, a customer calls and says, he's lost his card, wants to block the card, wants a card to be reissued from the bank. That call could last for like 4 or 5 minutes, maybe more, right? Depending on what you are changing and what needs to be done in your core applications and systems. Now, for somebody to QC what happened, because that is a one-on-one transaction between that customer service agent and the customer, right? And these calls are recorded, right? So there is a role within the industry known as the quality analyst or quality controller who goes, listens to the recording, grades the person, and checks whether right thing has been done or not. Right now, typically for a 5 minutes call, it will equally take 5 minutes because he has to listen through the entire call and then has to do some checks, so maybe like 7 minutes, right? Now, how AI comes into this is that you can automate that. So instead of 5 or 7 minutes, you can actually, Arya will do it real time, right? Now, given this maths, mathematically it is impossible to monitor all these million transactions that you just spoke of, but if you put the AI on top, so the application really sits on top of all your ecosystem, we integrate with your ecosystem, and then it can monitor 100% of transactions on a real time. Now, this is very much possible. We're actually doing it with many customers at the moment.
So basically you're saying it is just not helping the employees in an organization to
Right.
work better and faster, but is also able to do tasks which were completely impossible to do before.
Absolutely.
Okay, which is adding to more value.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I have experienced that in my role.
Right.
Right. Now, when it comes to AI or any other automation tool, it's more from a simple task to more complex task is achievable today to automate.
Yeah.
And I do hear questions about, will it take away the jobs?
Right.
Right? Will it take away the jobs?
Yeah.
How do you handle such conversations
Yeah.
internally?
Yeah.
And do you think it's real? Is it real that we may lose jobs?
You mean when you say lose jobs, meaning somebody doing a particular task and AI kind of replaces that?
Yeah.
And then
So, for example,
that
I am
person-
somebody who takes call
Okay.
every day.
Yeah.
And tomorrow I have Arya or something else,
Right.
which can auto respond to a certain question.
Yeah.
So what happens to that individual?
Okay. So first of all, Jitesh, I would like to assure you that I don't think that jobs are going anywhere, because if you go back to history, every invention has only led to more opportunities. I see this the same with AI, because it doesn't replace, it supplements, it complements, and I think there are new roles that are coming up and only increasing the requirements. So for example, there's a prompt engineers, as I mentioned earlier, right? There is data annotation work that is very, coming up in a big way, right? Because it requires that, right? So I do not see that AI is going to replace humans, but I see it is going to complement, make it much more efficient and better.
Wonderful.
Well, I think, I know that you've had a considerable amount of experience within GCCs as well. And that's something that I wanted to touch upon. So what's your opinion about GCCs, how it's coming up in India? And of course, where do you see AI and innovation in this ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a good one. And I'll answer this question in two ways.
Sure.
One, from a GCC angle.
Right.
And second, what is happening in this AI landscape. So let me cover the AI landscape first. See, where the world is today, everybody is talking about AI. From investor to enterprise to consumer to government, anyone from a startup standpoint. Everybody is trying to figure out how do I use this technology at very best. And I believe when that is the environment and time, somebody can take a lead. It's a weak time where everybody trying to figure out. India and Indian GCC can take a lead on AI, that what is the best method to deploy AI at a large scale in an enterprise.
Right.
So I believe as India as a nation on a global scale, GCC from a business transformation standpoint can leverage AI in that way.
Right.
Because everybody else is figuring out.
Yeah.
And that we can be the first mover.
Yeah.
The second, why this GCC? See, GCC today is around 25 to 26 billion market,
Right.
employing around
Right.
1.8 million.
Can I
employees.
just interrupt you here, because while you and me might be quite conversant with the terminology, would you first like to explain to our audience exactly what GCC is? Yeah.
So GCC is an outsourcing unit
Right.
which sits and manage the most of the cases back office and middle office operations, but under the same parent company.
It's a captive operation.
It's a captive office.
Yeah, got
right?
it.
So that's what the global competencies is.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to work in this area for quite long years and driven various innovations and transformations. So got some good insights on that.
Right.
But this industry today is around 26 billion
Wow.
with the projection of becoming 70 billion in next decade.
Amazing.
Current GCC portfolio holds 1.8 million employees in India.
Wow.
So imagine where it's going.
Right.
Now, like you mentioned earlier as well,
Yeah.
JT, initially the outsourcing was labor arbitrage,
Right.
but now world wants to tap on Indian talent,
Okay.
right? They are just not bringing data entry jobs. They are bringing really complicated jobs and roles in India.
Right.
Some of the functions
Yeah.
like finance, HR, technology are fully managed within India.
Right.
And there are many examples of that.
Yeah.
So I believe GCC will create a significant value with AI.
Right.
And this also can capitalize on, right, moving away from global competency center or a service center to global innovation center for the enterprise.
Right.
And I'll tell you two reasons why.
Sure.
majority of operations which we manage are within India as GCC,
Right.
whether it's finance, HR, and many other operations.
Right.
So the entire knowledge base sits here.
Yeah.
Entire data sits here. And that's what AI needs to be fully accurate.
Right.
So GCC have that advantage to figure this technology out, set up some AI R&D unit who will go out in market and figure out the possibilities,
Right.
try it, test it, and then transition that technology to the parent company.
Okay.
Right,
That's
so
a
it becomes-
very good idea.
A continuous loop of innovation, not just one time,
Right.
right? And GCC have the entire leverage to do that.
Now, having said that, I think I would like to move to something which is again, that I see that regulation is falling behind, right? At times, in terms of something comes up in the market, some new technology comes, and then regulation kind of follows, right? So, what is your take on AI and the regulations?
So what's happening in the world today, right? One, from an AI standpoint, which has transformed discussions, raises so many questions and concerns. There is, when you use GPT, there is a conversation window, and there are some character limitations to it.
Right.
Okay, so if you, let's say 4,000 characters, it can go up to, and then you have to restart the chat. With the upgraded license, there is more numbers, but still you have to restart. The second, that's the conversation window. Remember this term,
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
window. This, or the context window, we can say. The second is the large language models. What these are? Basically, we type something, we say, go read about maths, learn few experiments about math, and try it, right? Which becomes your actionable models as well. The third invention which is happening is text to action, voice to action, correct?
Yeah.
What innovation is trying to happen today with Gemini, Llama, and GPT? They're trying to make this conversation window endless. So you can ask endless question based on your chain of thought, which is supported by LLM, which will have expertise on the trainings we have done. And the third is text to action, voice to action.
Right.
The fear is what GPT is doing today, what Gemini is doing today, and other startups which are doing today. What if their LLMs start talking to each other and develop their own language? And this is where it becomes uncontrollable, because one side you have a contextual window which can give any command. Then there is a text to action window. We have seen so many demos. So it can have their own language and start operating by themselves, which humans cannot control.
Right.
So in the labs, when they're experimenting this,
Yeah.
this gets discussed.
Yeah.
This was a statement by Elon Musk as well.
Okay.
You have not seen what I have seen. Right? There was an incident with Facebook as well where they had to shut off their servers because AI model was not reacting well. Right? So this is the fear. Now, in this, you see US as a market, which is more market driven. They say you self-regulate.
Yeah.
Right? If you have an idea, experiment, we'll find the regulation later. Europe is quite different.
Yeah.
It's regulation first.
Yeah.
And that's why you see less innovation also happening there. Right? And this is where everybody talks about that regulations are important. Because sometimes we, as a consumer, we do not have access what this technology can exactly do,
Right.
which others might have seen in demos and in the labs.
Okay.
So this three things, right?
Yeah.
The context window, your LLM agents,
Yeah.
and text to voice, text to action and voice to action. If they start operating by themselves, that's where people fear just pull the plug and get the system running by their own.
I mean, I totally get what you're saying, because at the end of the day, we're trying to mimic human brain, right? And of course, we have odd cases even in the society as well, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a very, very powerful thing that's happening. So I totally get what you're saying here. But in your own journey so far, especially working with government agencies here in India, what is the government's view towards regulation, especially when it comes to AI within India? Do you have any views around that?
I think in India, we are not talking about a lot.
Okay.
Right. So last year, I was at Global AI Forum, which was hosted by India.
Right.
And I think this year has been hosted by Japan. This is where few speakers from outside came in and they did press on it. right? UNICEF, they did speak about it a lot. Regulation. I think that is not happening. I think at least there has to be a discussion where we know when you say regulation, what do you mean? For example, the AI Act in Europe, if you are in Europe, you want to release a product, you will have to follow that framework even before you launch the product. That's not the case in US. Well, at least they know how they remove the biasness, if there is a biasness, how they are handling it.
Right.
They have to provide that entire information to the government, and there you are allowed to an entry. So to me, if we need to learn, we must learn a little bit from Europe, from regulation, but not fully adopt their model, because it will kill the innovation as well, right? Which has been accepted by various politicians from Europe recently. It's in the news. So I think that discussion needs to happen. When you say ethics and regulation, what do you mean? Right? That narrative needs to come out. And I believe our media houses, a lot of business magazine can start talking about it. Else founder will never know, because they're in a stage where they're excited about their idea and they want to make it happen. Who will care of regulation at then? Right? So, and this is where I was differentiating between European and US market. It's market driven. If it is scalable, it can create business, go do it. We'll regulate later. Europe is completely different, but it's also killing the innovation.
Okay. We have come to the end of the episode. It was such a wonderful conversation with you. Lovely to have you. My key takeaways, it was lovely to broadly discuss about AI, startups, the role of governments, potential pitfalls for founders and GCC. It was such a enlightening session for me. Would you like to share any closing commentary from your side?
See, first of all, thank you for the invitation.
Very welcome.
Really enjoyed conversation. Learned a lot from you as well, JT.
Likewise.
See, my only remark would be that AI is a revolution, is a transformative technology.
Right.
I think it has given us a stage where we can ask big questions, try to figure out what's impossible into possible. And whether you are an individual, corporate, enterprise, a startup, you must leverage this technology to figure out what it can make a sense to you and go with it. If there are risks involved, so be it, have any mitigation, but do try to make something happen out of it. That would be my intake. JT.
That's such a brilliant point. Thank you very much, Jitesh, for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us in our podcast, and we look forward to the next one.